Paula Ragan, CEO of X4 Pharmaceuticals, which is a publicly held company focusing on transformative therapies for patients, particularly those with immune deficiency disorders. This is a really understudied population in general, very few approvals, and their lives are quite challenging. We all remember the COVID days. Those are their everydays. So these are groups of people that are at high risk of severe and life-threatening infections, and we're doing something about that. We're so excited with our first approved drug that just came approved, FDA approved in April of 2024, and that's been launched in the US. And we just found an ex-US partner with Norgine, this excellent commercial company, great operational team. They know their business well, and they're certainly focused on innovative and transformative medicines for patients. So it's been a great year, and already 2025 is kicking off to be even bigger. I think we have learned more even directly, what do physicians and patients care about? Right? We always think we know in these ultra rare situations, but what has been highly affirmed by now, even the broader group of patients and physicians that are providing insights, is they really care about reducing their infection burden. And it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but these folks have lived with this disease for decades now, right? There's never been anything, no treatment, so they've learned to live with this. For those on treatment, what we're hearing is, wow, I didn't know what great feels like, right? You just don't know what the impact of a treatment can be. In terms of our phase 3 data, we did see a 60% reduction in infection rates, a huge drop in the days with infections, about from 49 days to 14 days, and then severity of infections also reduced by about 70%. So going from the clinical study and the data to how do patients experience this and what are they sharing, it really does feel like we hit it out of the park in terms of providing them options that they just couldn't even conceive of before. So I feel really proud of that. And of course, we keep learning. We're just in the first 8 months of launch in the US, so lots more to learn. But it's always inspiring to hear what the drug is doing from the voices of the patients. What we're learning is that, if the mind knows, the eye sees, right? It's hard to look for something that you're not completely aware of. So our additional education and awareness efforts, going to these medical conferences, both at the local and regional levels, as well as the big national ones like ASH and others, Quad AI, the physicians, appreciate that we're actually trying to give them a broad understanding of immunodeficiencies and then help them approach the diagnosis as to if it's WHIM or not. Of course, we want to support diagnosis of all patients. And then we actually have that, next opportunity in the event you find a WHIM patient, there's something new for them. There is an option for them that gets at the root cause of the disease. So I think we're learning that the physicians appreciate this. There's really not a lot of innovation and investment in education and awareness. It's kind of a pretty quiet field. Immunoglobulins have been around for decades. So it's been very rewarding to get such a strong receptivity to our education and awareness efforts, and we see it pulling through. It's exciting because it means we're taking another big step towards helping patients throughout the world, which is our mission. Kind of the 1-2 positive punch here in 2025 was our Norgine deal. As I mentioned earlier, we partnered with a very strong commercial group in Europe, and now with the EMA accepting our filing, we're about a year from launch. It takes about 12 months or so. So in first half of 2026, we expect this drug to be available for patients. And that's really what we've been striving towards. We are so happy with how the launch has been going in the US. Building a commercial company globally is a very big undertaking. So now we have the two ingredients that are really hopefully going to, deliver quite a life-changing events for those patients in Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. Now that we have the path towards approval starting, and then the commercial party that can help deliver it to patients. No, I would say what we've learned is it's fairly similar. Sometimes these rare diseases have higher densities of patients in certain ethnic backgrounds or their founder effects. We've not seen that with WHIM syndrome or the CXCR4 mutation sort of blanket of epidemiology. So in the United States, we feel very comfortable saying there's at least 1,000 patients, and certainly so far everything we've learned in the European, New Zealand, and Australia territories, it would mirror those same types of prevalence numbers. Yes, so there's no required genetic test. WHIM syndrome is a clinical diagnosis. The WHIM stands for the four different components of the syndrome, and that's what makes it tricky because not all patients have all four. Genetic tests are confirmatory in some cases, so a genetic test for different mutations in CXCR4 can help the physician make that final diagnosis. They can also make the final diagnosis by looking at bone marrow analyses because there's certain pathologic profiles that correspond with WHIM syndrome as well. The approval path has started years ago when we approached the European regulators with scientific advice. You always want to make sure you're almost aligned before you begin that journey because a clinical trial is such a big undertaking and a very significant commitment. So years ago, we definitely aligned on scientific advice on the trial design, and we also aligned on some other regulatory acknowledgments like orphan drug designation. All of that helps the agencies get familiar with X4's approach. We executed on what we've agreed with them. We've also executed well on European regulators do require a pediatric plan, a plan to submit a concurrent with your application. So we've agreed on that plan with the regulators. So I feel very confident that between the data we've already seen in WHIM, same trial, same data, where we have this very impactful and positive data on reduction in severity, duration, of course, rate of infections should translate very meaningfully to the European regulators, given we aligned on those same important metrics a while ago. We are excited to continue to expand the number of patients that we're helping. So just to give a highlight to our ongoing phase 3 study in chronic neutropenia, whereas WHIM is ultra rare, chronic neutropenia is actually much more common. There's about 50,000 patients in the United States today with this diagnosis. So we're taking the same drug, same dose, and seeing if we can also help these immunocompromised patients. We're very excited because of the similarities of the diseases and the mechanisms to help them. And we are so appreciative of the medical communities and patient communities to consider this because, of course, recruiting a clinical trial is the rate-limiting step to generating the answer from it. So we're hopeful that some of these communities will consider reaching out to the various websites and clinicaltrials.gov's opportunities that we can to help connect the trial to the right people.